think that I'm going to start this webinar. Thanks, first of all, for the guests that are currently dropping in. Thanks also for John and Roberto for joining this webinar. My business partner, Marco Baldini, unfortunately couldn't join today because he was ill. Let's hope it's not COVID. But my name is Bastiaan Brouwer, and I'm here from Spark Innovation Catalyst. Spark is a small Italian consultancy boutique, but I have to say we're also present on a global level with different business partners. We have lean and agile in our DNA, and we base our work on principles and values. And we organized this webinar because we're actually organizing, as you can see in the top right corner of my screen and also here in the screen of the webinar, we're organizing on the 11th of October a summit in Florence, Italy, the evolution of lean and agile in an age of complexity. And as you can see, we have quite an impressive lineup of speakers. We have Dave Snowden, we have Nigel Thurlow, we have John Shook, we are going to meet today. We have Professor Richard Egan, we have Professor Andrea Furlan, we have Roberto Ronzani, who's also here today, and Professor John Turner. And I can already give you a bit of a sneak preview. In the next few days, we will announce some other speakers for the summit as well. With regards to this, organizing a couple in the last years, what we wanted to achieve is a place where experts, thought leaders, practitioners could come together and where we could exchange knowledge and experience based on the things that we're applying on a daily basis. And so that everybody can exchange, can learn, enjoy, and in such a way can elevate, so to speak, what we know about lean and today I wanted to give you an opportunity to already know and get to know some of our speakers. Today we have John Shook here and Roberto Ronzani, and allow me to introduce both of them. I'll start with John Shook. John, thanks for joining us today. John is the co-author, together with another famous person, Mike Rother, of the popular value stream mapping workbook, Learning to See, and the book that introduced value stream mapping to the world. He's also the author of Managing to Learn about A3 problem solving and coaching. And before you became an author and a consultant and speaker, John, you were one of the first employees at Toyota's headquarters, if I'm not mistaken, starting in 1983. And the company's first American, do I pronounce it right, Kako? Is that Kacho? That means manager in Japan. In his 11th year Toyota career, John helped to transfer production, engineering, and management systems from Japan to the Numi plant and other operations around the world. And he also served as a deputy general manager of the Toyota Production System Support Center, TSSC, which assisted American automotive suppliers to implement lean manufacturing. And John, immediately a question for you. Of course, we're very curious, how important was that experience in Toyota in both Japan and America for the work that we know you of today?
Hello, Bastiaan and everyone. First of all, with a quick nod, you can let me know that you can hear me okay. From halfway across the world, I'm calling from the Midwest in the USA. The question for me is a bit, I suppose my response is of how I encountered all of this way of thinking and working is kind of specific to me. I went to Japan first time in the 1977, actually. And then I joined Toyota in Japan in 1983, as you mentioned, and worked for them for 11 years. And so everything I think and know about this comes from that experience, almost. I would like to think I've learned some things since then, as I have worked with others to learn about this way of thinking and working. But that experience was foundational. I still go back, I'm mining. There's something now called process mining. I still go, I do mining of my, of those 11 years all the time, and overlay it with my experience of observing that the challenges that people have every day. So for me, yeah, that experience was, I would not be involved in this type of work were it not for that experience.
Can imagine. We're going to hear probably more about this during this webinar. Thank you. Let me also introduce Roberto Ronzani. Roberto Ronzani is co-founder and CEO of the Italian Lean Management Institute. He has an engineering degree in electronics and worked in telecom and automotive for about 20 years, where he learned about lean. He has gained experience in the implementation of lean thinking in both manufacturing and product development as a technical director and industrial director. And for at least the last 10 years, he has been committed to transferring to people and organization the lean skills during training and coaching activities. And so let's say with a managerial background and now let's say with a coaching and training profile, I'm curious, Roberto, I mean, was there a specific moment in your career that you said, okay, this lean, what I'm learning is that important, I have to make this absolutely my career and I have to, let's say, show this to the rest of Italy and the rest of the world?
Okay. Okay, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Bastiaan, to have invited me. I remember very well that moment because I was implementing lean in my previous company for it was 5 years, and arrived a new CEO in the company, and was the moment that I had to introduce the new organization organized for value stream. And when I introduced this, the first words that the CEO said were, "This is only romanticism. It's completely unuseful." And that was the moment I decided to leave the company after 17 years. And so I was looking for any other job. Doesn't matter what kind of role. I was a manager, high-level manager, and it was not important to me to go anywhere, but there should be lean as the method to lead the company. And in that moment, I had many opportunities to go, for example, in some companies, but also in a business school. So it was proposed me to go as a teacher in a business school, and thinking back on my previous year, I liked to do some teaching inside the company, so I accepted. And that was the moment I was in this high school, starting to teach and to do lean, teaching something to people, to company. So it was in 2009, so almost 13 years ago.
Wow.
And was in that occasion that I knew John Shook and all other people.
Very nice. And I'm clicking away the big screen so we can see each other bigger on the screen. So talking a little bit about, let's say, leaving the company, or let's say the moment that you decided actually both, let's say, to transfer the knowledge that you gained, let's say, to other companies. What was, let's say, the company, what were the problems that companies were trying to solve at the time?
Roberto?
Okay, I can start with my first experience as manager. Your question is a manager or as a teacher?
As a teacher, at the moment that you started teaching, transferring your knowledge, yeah.
My first job was a big job. The first year of my activity as a lean coach or lean teacher was in an international program in 30 countries, something like that. And I had to teach and to coach a lean agent inside a multinational company. And this program was about 100 days a year, so 2 weeks a month, doing some teaching with him in a training, in a train the trainer method. So going to the Gemba, doing some lessons with this guy side by me the first week and doing some job in the Gemba. The second week was him to teach other with me coaching him. So it was a long program, but very effective for people. So in 1 year, he was able to achieve the right skills to improve things and the processes inside his company. This was my first experience. And day after day, month after month, I typically did the same with several different companies, but not with programs so big and so long. That was really a very big program.
And if you look, let's say, at the struggles or the problems, let's say that company or those companies at the time had to solve in terms maybe of productivity or efficiencies or lead, what were they trying to solve at the time?
The main problem they had to solve is to improve process, to make to have higher productivity first, and second, to reduce the risks, because for some kind of processes there were only one person in Italy in several plants able to do something. So it was just to improve productivity first, second, to have more people with different skills. So to reduce the risk of business interruption.
So process optimization, as you said. And John, I mean, did you encounter the same? I mean, you've been, when you were already in Toyota, you started, of course, helping other companies improve. Do you recognize what Roberto was saying also in the US? Was that what companies were looking for? Or maybe was that what even Toyota required of their suppliers?
You said in the question this time, you said what companies were looking for. That's a different question than the first one of what problems they were facing. So there's a perception we have of what our problems are, and then there's what the real problems are. What people have been looking for has changed a bit. The world of physical manufacturing 20 and 30 years ago was pretty broken. Things did not work well. Quality was horrible. So we also had the quality movement, you recall. So there was a lot of work that was needed to be done to improve all that. And that was the focus of a lot of companies, company managers, and improvement activities. And I think that makes sense if you look at where things were. Now, things are a bit different. We've moved from concern about the concrete factory Gemba floors to office carpeted Gemba floors. And it's more office work, more knowledge work, and also more concern about managerial things than there were probably 20 or 30 years ago. But I should emphasize that I see the similarities more than the differences. I guess after a few decades of observing, experiencing work around the world and many different types of work, at the end of the day, it's amazing to me how it's all the same. Fundamental challenges that people face at work, no matter what type of work or no matter where in the world, to me, it tends to be kind of the same. And part of our challenge is kind of stripping away the parts that make that difficult to see. So I see the similarities more than the differences. But the trends of what people are looking for and working on, sure, that has changed a lot. Fundamentally, I don't think it's changed at all.
No, I mean, it was actually, thank you for looking a little bit further. I mean, it was actually something that I wanted to ask you both. I mean, basically, the title of the summit is this Age of Complexity, and we chose that title because we believe the world has become more complex than it ever was. And I was curious hearing from you, and I think you already said a little bit about that. Do you see that fundamentally, let's say, companies have more complex problems? Has problem solving became more complex? How do you see that? How does it have changed how do you say, as you maybe were saying, fundamentally maybe, huh?
Start, John.
Sure, you can.
Now, what I can see from my angle of vision is, I think that except some very simple problems to solve, all problems are complex, and even more complex due to the speed you have to solve problems. So you have to solve problems very rapidly now because the rhythm pace is much higher, and so also the let me say, the not complex, the complicated problems became complex because you have to solve in simultaneous way many things. So this is the problem. I agree totally with John. Exactly the same of the past. Probably more difficult to see because not only in production Gemba but also in offices and other environment, but are more complex because the speed first. And this is my perception. Do you agree?
I see John laughing.
I agree, and I'm not trying to. So I love the ideas of complexity. We first encountered them almost 20 years ago. Books to be written. Complexity. It's wonderful. It's enlightening to be aware of complexity. It's also a bit abstract. I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that it is from a pure human perspective. As a human being, one person, what does complexity really mean to me? I'm influenced in ways I can't even be aware of. But essentially, I believe as a team, it manifests itself as unpredictability. You don't know what's going to happen next. And is that greater today? The James Webb Telescope looks about 15 billion years ago. The universe was complex 15 billion years ago. Earth is only 4 billion years old, we think. It's complex for a long time. Life has been complex for a long time, especially if you think on the individual level, it's been unpredictable. My father was born in 1916, right before the last big pandemic, which no one predicted. He came of age during the Great Depression, global economies, unpredictable. He was a small farm in rural Tennessee Valley. In response to the Depression, there was a new American president, Franklin Roosevelt, who introduced new policies, new systems that changed his life dramatically. Therefore, it changed mine. I would not have any of the experiences that I've had, but all of that was unpredictable. All of it was unpredictable. In hindsight, we can kind of explain it, but that's not the same. So is there a faster speed to change now? I suppose. You know, the clock speed. Professor Charles Fine at MIT wrote a book called Clock Speed, that the faster we go through cycles, the more learning occurs. So sure, that is happening. But again, I think we can overestimate the difference. I think 100 years ago, things also looked like things were moving faster, and they were. 100 years from now, things are probably going even faster. The fundamental challenge is for us to understand where we are now and navigate through the things that are the complexity to try to get to a better place. I believe.
Exactly. I remember also the comment of last webinar with Professor Richard Keegan, and he said, yeah, remember 50 years ago when we were engineering and we were trying to engineer parts of a car or parts of a machine or parts of an airplane, the tools that we had available to do the work that we still nowadays do were far less advanced than maybe the tools that we have nowadays. So, I mean, maybe the speed increased, but at the same time, we probably have much more instruments also to facilitate the work that we're doing. So he also he said, you know, I don't think that for us as individuals, the work or the challenges had actually become more complex. It's just a matter of time. And with the hindsight that you were saying, probably in the past, things now seem simpler than they were at the time. That's an interesting one. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the common denominator, or at least let's say, instead of saying that one situation is more complex as the other, but I wanted to bring it a little bit to the tools maybe that we have available to approach complexity or approach problems that we have nowadays. And Roberto, I think I put you a little bit on mute because I hear that there was a bit of noise in the background. So when you talk, you can unmute yourself. But John, you wrote the book Learning to See, and which offers you tools to help the company understand in which situation, in terms of process, they're actually in. I remember a phrase from the book, to see together, to understand together, to be able to act together. What is the essence of value stream mapping, and why is it such a fundamental tool?
Great question. I wish we could just sit together with an adult beverage and talk about this for a while. But that's what will happen at the conference, right? Is people can talk about these things. So for many of these questions, I want a preface. I think we tend to love, maybe it's the Western European mind especially, loves to give these definitive answers. Actually, they're a complexity again. These are very complex matters. And we have our best understanding today, and then that will hopefully be at another level later. So you picked up a very interesting quote, thank you, that maybe many people would not, to characterize what was maybe important about the book. To see together, to understand together, and be able to act together. I think that is a very important part of it. I would add to think together. So in organizations, we need to think together. And to do so, it helps to have some intentionality and perhaps some tools to help us do that. It's not so easy. It's not so easy for me to see inside what's in your brain. We communicate, right? I have an idea, it comes out, you hear it, you interpret it. And we're dealing in these complex situations, I will say. So how can we think together about where we are and about where we can go next, where we would like to go, you know, sometime later. So I think there were 2 or 3 deeply misunderstood or not appreciated or misunderstood aspects of learning to see, LTS, and VSM. The first one is that I love the quote you picked out, but I'd also invite you or others to think about what's the most important part of that book. And well, 2 things. I guess one is what you picked up on, the title. And the title came, I believe, in my recollection, it came from Professor Dan Jones, who looked at this tool and said, oh, the title of the book should be Learning to See. That wasn't my idea. It wasn't my idea to do a book at all. I was a skeptical, reluctant participant in the project. My thought was it's another tool. Is the problem managers have that they don't have enough tools? No, so why? But I think I was wrong. The reason I was wrong and what convinced me that it was a good idea was the title Learning to See. So we're going to learn to see together, exactly the quote that you pulled out, Bastiaan. And we're going to give people, managers, a different lens through which they can see operations, the way the work that they do, that they manage, a lens to see it differently. So that is very important. The second thing is it's based on questions, not solutions. So the most if there's one page out of the entire book people were to keep, it's the inside of the cover, where there are, I think it's 7 questions that are given. The point is the question, not the solution. Value stream mapping doesn't give you a single answer. And yet people try to take away solutions. For example, even the solution or conclusion that they should copy the tool, use this tool, use Kanban, you know, whatever it is, they think that. The point was the questions, and what's given to you in the book are means by which to effectively address those questions as a team. So all the lean tools, really, this is what they're about. If you think about it, almost none of the lean tools give you a solution to anything. They give you a means of looking at what's happening, to ask questions and think about it together and work through together. So that is a vastly misunderstood part of LTS. The second thing is, and here's where it relates to, I think a lot of the themes of the conference, thinking about age of complexity. And I know my friend who I respect tremendously, David Snowden, makes a distinction between system and complexity, and that's wonderful. And I love, you know, hearing and learning about that. So I'm going to be a little more simplistic and not make quite the same distinction, and just say that, at least in my mind, when I think of the value stream mapping, it is a system visioning tool. It's not something to look at and say, oh, identify the waste and go remove it. So no, it's to understand how your work at your level is working as a, I'm going to say now, simple system. So if they're complex systems or complexity, and then there are simple systems, right? We systems and subsystems. The way it helps managers learn to see, back to the see together, is to see your work as a system. And indeed as a simple system, as a closed loop system with feedback loops. So that's what, and now it's going to give you the ability to look at the work you do in that light, and then work together toward how you could create a more predictable, a more effective, and then later efficient, always effectiveness before efficiency, way of doing, to redesign your system together. So it's based on a consensus understanding of where we are, and looking at those questions, and then thinking about the future. You notice in the book, there's no delineation of the famous 7 waste.
Not true.
They're not in there. There's one is in there, overproduction. Why? Because overproduction is something we do to ourselves that creates greater complexity in the system you're working within. So by learning simply to control that, you can create a more effective system, a less frustrating system that can accomplish its intended purpose much better. I mean, that's the reason Taiichi Ono said overproduction is the worst form of waste, because it causes all these others. Overproducing, which means not only producing too much, by the way, it means making too soon. Too much and too soon. So if you can control that, you can create a system that would have much greater effectiveness and achieve its intention much more easily. Does that kind of address your question, Bastiaan?
Absolutely. I was actually, and you already answered it. I was actually also, I wanted to ask you the question. If you look at mapping the value stream within a company, what would be the situation that you would say, this isn't really working like it's supposed to work? What would be the parameters that you would evaluate to say, okay, this is a company that functions properly, or a process that functions properly, or a process that is dysfunctional? And I think you mentioned, you said work as a system, and I think you said too soon, too much in terms of production. Are those two parameters that you would evaluate to say this is a functional process or a functional company, or a process that functions properly?
Well, one other thing about all these tools, including that one, is these instruments, is they're intended for a certain purpose to solve a certain problem. So at one level, the answer to your question would depend on what that team discovers. First of all, is to allow them to see together and simply ask, is this accomplishing what we want it to? What we want it to. We want it to give customers what they want when they need it. You know, at a cost and price where we can be profitable. So we can, as an organization, as a team, survive and thrive. As an organization, we want to survive and thrive. This is what we'd like to have. And yet, we're working in this mess. Every company is a mess. When I say it's the same now as 20 years ago, 20 years ago too, every company is an absolute mess. So if you think about a car, you know, you have a beautiful car, Ferrari. Roberto Ronzani used to design parts for the most beautiful cars in the world, a Ferrari. Beautiful. Open up the hood of any company, and under the hood, they're a disaster. They're a mess. People are going crazy. They want to kill them. So every company is this way. So how can we understand it, think together where we would like to go, and then make that better? So sure, an easy way is to think in terms of starting from value for the customer. But the point is, what problems do we need to solve so we can survive and thrive? We need to make our customers happy. We want our communities to prosper. We want to prosper as an organization. And so this can help us, you know, understand what's happening so we can do that better.
Do it better. And also, Roberto, I mean, you said also one of your first projects was already about value stream mapping, or actually when you have within the company that maybe was, let's say, the bridge between your work as a director and your work as a trainer and consultant. You said you work with value stream mapping, but now that you did many value stream maps of many companies that you helped, were you able to find out the reason why, as John said, that under the hood it's always a mess? Is there a reason? Is there a pattern that you see between companies why these processes are like spaghetti, maybe? Yeah. Let's see if we can. Here you go.
Okay, now you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I have an experience of a value stream mapping just of yesterday. A small company producing a certain kind of material, and they spent a lot of money in the process. They bought a very big machine, 2 million euros, one more machine, another 1 million euro. But the problem is the system, not exactly the process. So what I can see also now, and also in the past in many value stream I did, or I teach other people to do, is they are mostly focused on the process, how to improve the added value inside the machine, but not the whole system as a system. So for example, yesterday we discovered that there were 1, 2, 3 adding value steps or processes, and to do that, at least 25 other activities not adding value. So this is what we always or very often see inside companies. So the main focus on the technician in production are in the added value machine or added value activity, not see all the system. And what said before John was really what I can discover every day. Value stream mapping as a process that takes half a day, 1 day, 2 days, all together, is the way that permit people to understand what is happening. Often is enough. It's not really, so it's important just to make the future state, but only looking at what the process or the whole system is performing often is just a hit in the bell of the people. They are able to understand how it's going. This is really what I can see now, and is the same of 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The problem is always in the system, not in the, okay, so only sometimes in the value added process, but most of them in the process.
So
the system, sorry.
This sparks a bit of my curiosity, and little bit earlier, we talked also about, let's say, the developments in the world, or let's say between the past and nowadays. I mean, if you look at it on a company level, on an organizational level, or even on a humanity level, is there a reason why we keep on repeating these patterns? As you said, hey, we're looking at the bottleneck, or we just look at one step at the machine. Why do you think that these kind of patterns keep on continuing, repeating themselves?
Not easy to answer for me.
John, have you found, let's say, maybe it's even the Holy Grail, but let's say, have you found the reason in your experience why companies keep on, let's say, focusing on, let's say, maybe specific operations and keep on forgetting about, let's say, the whole flow of value?
Yeah, well, again, I think these are great questions for us to explore, and I would encourage us not to try to give too definitive, narrowly definitive sort of an answer. I think profound questions are ones that we wrestle with, we think about forever. They're not to just come up with, here's the answer. I think that's one problem, especially the Western European mind has. Okay, what's the one answer? It's the one thing. So I'm going to write the one book that's going to describe this. We do live in complex systems. You know, so human society is a complex thing. We want to understand it at our level, and we want to have a life that we can survive maybe 80 years, and during that 80 or so years, maybe 90. My friend Edgar Schein I spoke with yesterday, is I think 93. But we want to thrive during that time as well. So we want that for our enterprises also. So there's this big mechanistic view that we've had. Again, probably kind of a Western European sort of thing that began with a few centuries ago. And the word organization comes from organism. So we're much more like an enterprise, more like an organism than it is a machine. And it's nested. We have nested systems, and I guess that's where, you know, things get more and more complex. And I don't know. Again, I think with David and Nigel and all of us, we could think about this question more. But I don't think, you know, humans have only been trying to organize ourselves to do things together about 10,000 years, right? And we're not very good at it yet. My view of history is that we have just, I mean, think about it just for a minute. 4 billion years for the Earth, whatever, 1 million or so years of a human race, 100,000 where we really look kind of like we are, 10,000 of organizing ourselves in cities. We're at the beginning, I think, of being what we can be. And our understanding of this is you know, I think thinking about complexity in systems is less than 100 years old, really, right? And I don't think anyone really has a handle on how you do system design and then try to achieve that. And in fact, is that exactly the right way to look at it even? So Russell Aikoff talked about messy problems. You know, so we're making an assumption with that question, Bastiaan, that I don't disagree with the question, that things should not be messy. You say, why do we keep having this? Well, maybe that's, you know, the way things kind of are. Humans are kind of messy. Certainly they are now. And we're trying to do something a bit unnatural, the way we organize ourselves to produce this thing. I mean, is there anything natural about, you know, I don't know, a supply chain that stretches all around the world to make this thing that has this software that we can't even see, that then we ship out to, and then having this change his life? Wow, I mean, that's where we are. So it's natural in the sense that it has happened. But the fact that there's messiness associated with it probably should not be of any great surprise to anyone. So the fact that companies, going back to my experience, you know, with Toyota many years ago, and many people ask, well, why don't we have the next Toyota or something? Well, first of all, we may have it, and it's simply organizations that don't use our language, our terminology, right? It's completely different language that's being used. Maybe it was even this company. The other thing is the specific corporate culture that I found within that company, Toyota. I never really thought that it could be replicated. It's not, it shouldn't be any surprise that it's very difficult, but everyone wants to become its best version of surviving and thriving, defining its overall purpose. It begins there, and then breaking that into problems we can solve. Now, I think the lean methods give us means by which we can understand our situation better, throw good questions against that, have a good idea then of kind of where I want to go with a true north, but then just deciding next steps. And every time you take a step, you have to stop and reevaluate. So I think this framework that we have of PDCA is understood in the right way, can be very useful. And it can usefully help us navigate. I like the word navigation. We navigate life. We navigate problems, situations at work. And as we navigate, one day we have a different situation the next day that we need to assess the situation again, throw against our situation the same questions. But these tools of lean thinking and practice, I think, are trivialized and underestimated. There's a tendency in recent years to kind of denigrate them, say, oh, it's not about the tools. Well, yeah, it's not about the tools, but there's great wisdom in those tools, actually, if we can use them wisely use them to their original intent. I think this is an important thing to think about and to talk about during your conference.
Absolutely. And so while you were speaking, and
one more thing. Again, those tools are system tools. Value stream mapping is for sure, but so are the others. It's understood they're existing within a system, and that system has things you can't control. And so they're all within that context. And one specific way they're system tools is almost all of them are social. So for 50 years we've had the theory of socio-technical system. Mm-hmm. So it's not exactly complexity. Okay, it's social and technical. In enterprises, all companies are social and technical systems. And I would argue equally. And here's another thing. The statistician George Box said all models are wrong. Some are useful. It's something I think of every day regarding things like this. Okay, the point is this going to be useful for us? So as social technical system, that can be useful. Is that the only way to look at what happens in a company? No. Does it capture everything? I don't know, maybe not. But it can be very useful. And every one of these tools, value stream mapping, the A3, they are social and technical. Where we went wrong is people using only the technical side. The technical side, value stream mapping, you've seen where people try to automate the value stream mapping process. They totally missed to the point that you brought up in the beginning, that it's a way to see together. If I automate it, the point is not just the technical answer that gives me of how big the Kanban lot should be. The point is looking at that together, thinking together about what we'd like it to be. And then when it doesn't actually work out the way we planned, what went wrong, what changed, what did we not understand about the work, how can we not now design it and do it better next time? So they're all social and technical tools. Sorry, I felt the need to.
I love what you're saying. And meanwhile, I was making this reflection. Of course, we entitled this webinar a bit like, hey, has the work became more complex, or did we actually make it more complex? And I'm getting, let's say, I'm sliding towards the conclusion that, especially when you said under the hood, it's always a mess, and the velocity of today's markets, it seems like maybe we didn't really make it too complex, or we keep on making it too complex, but maybe we allow it to get complex. And that maybe because we're focusing, as you said, maybe each individual to survive and to thrive. Everybody's probably focusing on its specific role or specific part of the process, and that counts, as Roberto says, maybe for a machine inside the big process, but it could also be, let's say, a role of someone within a big company. And of course, you said, well, it's our European brains says that we need to find that one answer, but and it's almost impossible. But at the same time, I feel also that there might be not necessarily an answer, but there might be a correct direction. Huh? I mean,
A better direction.
A better direction. I mean, the
Well,
goal.
I would object to the word correct.
Better, yeah. Or let's say the goal of each company should, in the end, be customer first, right? I mean, that is in the end the purpose of the company, to make sure that we serve our company, that we serve our customers, and that we have a sustainable future in such respect. At the same time, I also see that even though we know that, we're conscious about that, maybe daily operations distracts us, and not only look at the company, but maybe look at what we're doing, about the problems that we have today and we need to solve for tomorrow. And then there's maybe a bottleneck, and let's solve that bottleneck. And then sometimes maybe we need to get back to value stream mapping and sit back again with our team and reflect and ask us the right questions. Are we still serving our customers? Are we still working to serve our purpose? So I know, what do you think? I mean, do we allow ourselves to get distracted from that customer first point of view? What do you think, Roberto?
I'm thinking about some experience we are doing with the last companies I visit. So typically, the supplier has in mind the customer, and probably at the beginning he's able to serve the customer about their needs. But customer is changing continuously. The needs of customer are continuously changing. And typically what I see is that the question of each supplier to the customer that is changing his needs, the question they ask themselves is not a question, but is justifying themselves. Okay, you are asking me, but you don't know how difficult it is to get you these new things. And on the opposite, the question should be, what should I do to serve the new needs of the customer? This is the right question that the supplier should have in mind for the customer. But typically, after doing a big effort to serve the customer, when the customer is changing his needs, the first thinking is justify. It's too difficult. You don't understand how difficult it is for me to serve this, to give you this lead time and so on. And this is what happened. You should ask me why. This is, for me, it's difficult, but it's just what I observe. And I think that as Kaizen word means continuous improvement. The word continuous is the most difficult. And even people is asking, okay, I have in focus my customer, but you should have it continuously, following the needs of the customer that are continuously changing. And the word continuous, on my point of view, is the most difficult to keep, to maintain inside companies. And this is the reason why things around us are changing. And we are not so able to follow in the right way all the changes. This is my interpretation of things.
And I think it's a very beautiful interpretation and conclusion that you're actually making to this, because I mean, the question that I had in mind to ask, but it kind of almost got answered automatically, is I wanted to ask, now that the book Learning to See has some years, so to speak, would it be, in this age of complexity, time to write some kind of a sequel to the book, like an update, like an improvement of Learning to See? And I think what we're kind of concluding altogether is that no, and the tool is valid enough. Maybe we need also have some continuity in actually applying it, or at least in the spirit of the tool, allowing us more frequent, and not once per year or maybe once per 5 years, but maybe every month, actually seeing together, to think together, as John added, or to understand together and to think together in order to address these kind of problems in our value stream together. And so maybe it's not, let's say, in the validity, I don't know if that's a correct English word, of the tool itself, but it's more in the frequency of use. Maybe that's the stimulus that these complex times give us, is that if that wheel is turning faster and faster, then maybe we have to look more frequent and frequent to what we're doing, and if we're doing it still with the real purpose and real intention of the company.
Oh yes, absolutely. More frequent is better. I mean, that's the basic concept of just-in-time production. The more frequently you're doing this, the more quickly you get feedback to see where you are, to grasp again. And that's the continuous dimension that Roberto referred to, I think. And that's why, even again, I mentioned PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Again, it's just a model.
Yeah.
It's a model. 4 phases. You can define it in different ways. I love the fact that it's ambiguous. Plan, do, check. They're kind of funny words. They're not. It was not a Deming invention, by the way. I mean, if you look at what he actually taught in Japan, it wasn't. There's quite an extrapolation that some people did to come up with PDCA. And when Deming first heard about it, he said it shouldn't be. He didn't like the word check because of the nuance of just check as opposed to study. Fine, but also somewhere along the way, Toyota started saying CA-PDCA. So you always begin by CA. In other words, grasping the situation. Where are we now? And then we have multiple tools at our disposal to grasp where we are now. A value stream map is one. Our eyes are another. Our ears are another. We have 5 senses. You go to a work site, you use all 6 senses. The 6th one is your intuition, your human. Oh,
nice.
Feel fearful. Some work sites you're fearful. Some you're like, oh, I feel welcome. I feel like this is nirvana. This is wonderful. So you use all your senses when you go. Value stream mapping is a tool to help, especially a team, to go through a process together, to think of where they are from a standpoint of a 2-dimensional map. So value stream mapping, as we introduced it, does not try to introduce everything of the system. But then you just got reality again if you try to represent everything, and that's too messy, it's too complex, too difficult for us as humans. It takes 2 dimensions and says, let's map that out as a snapshot, one point in time. The flow of work, say material and information flow, it's the flow of the work, and then the flow of not just all information. So people now that try to do this within a information work, completely missed the point. It's only control information. It's the information that tries to allow someone to know what each operation should do next. Because that's the difficulty of managing a company, is for you, I have 10,000 people here. How do they all know what to do next? It's incredibly difficult. It's outrageously complex. Just that. So I think if we reduce this, the concept of complexity into something that's at a human level, can we work at a simple system level that admittedly nest up into larger systems that are impacted by larger systems? But we're looking for a degree of predictability. We're trying to confirm our human understanding. Am I going to pick up this cup of coffee and it's going to be so hot that I can't touch it? I'm going to burn myself. Or I have a level of predictability. I can assign to that. So that but sometimes I'll pick it up and it's too hot. So and to your question about should we do it continuously and frequently, I think it cannot be too frequent, because when we use our eyes, it's a continuous thing. When we and again, the value stream map is just a snapshot in time. So my sequel I wrote a sequel. It was called Managing to Learn. It introduces the A3 tool. One antidote to what happened in Learning to See was, okay, if people are always going to misinterpret a tool as something to just use mindlessly, the tool of A3 could not be. Again, all the lean tools are deceptively simple. Deceptively simple. They're simple on the surface, but there's much more underneath that you don't see. And nothing then is more deceptively simple than the A3, because it's a blank sheet of paper. You have to assign meaning to it. How? By asking questions. What are those questions? They begin with, where are we? What is going on? How would we like things to be? What could we do to kind of get us there? And to do that together, to learn to think together and act together. So we could sense on the current reality. We could sense on where we would like to go. We like, sometimes we'll call that true north. But then we want to just look to your point, Bastiaan, we want to take one step and see what happened. So I'm going to pick up one coffee cup and see if it burned me or not. and then with that feedback, then I can determine next steps, and I get better at predicting what's going to happen. I think I'll be curious what Dave Snowden has to say. But I would say at the human level, all the discussion of complexity, it's just a matter of predictability. Can I predict what's going to happen to me next? Can I predict what's going to happen to my team next, to my value stream next? And the answer is, of course, not totally, but to some degree, I can. It's a matter of probability. It's all a matter of probabilities, I believe. And it goes back to, I'm an American, and I buy into the kind of American pragmatist philosophy, which always asks, what's useful? What is useful for human beings? And I think TPS and Lean also asks that. It says, what can we do that's useful? So sometimes as we're putting together conversations or workshops or seminars or something, there's two things we'd like any activity to be, including the conference spectrum. We'd like it to be interesting, but we'd really like it to be useful. It's okay, that's interesting. That's wonderful. But useful as a whole is another thing, and that's what we would like it to be. And so I think that's true for all of these things that we're talking about. There are parts that are interesting, and then there are parts that are useful. Now, interesting things can become useful if we understand it more deeply, but sometimes it's just a matter of being interesting.
Nice, very nice. So I'm also taking a quick look at the time. We're at the end of our webinar for today. So for sure, what I'm taking away is frequency. We have to quickly, or we have to frequently look at where we are. And what I also appreciated a lot what you're saying is that even if we look, we have to give meaning to what we see, asking the right questions and reflect on what we're seeing. And so I'm very much looking forward to your presence on the summit. And we know, John, that you're going to be present remotely, and Roberto is going to be on stage with us. But for sure, we want to learn more on, let's say, how to take a look at our companies and how to see, really see what we need to see in order to deal with this complex and changing environment. So let me close off, first of all, of course, by thanking you for your time and your effort in this webinar. And I'm addressing now quickly, let's say, also to the people who are listening right now, but also when we're going to publish it online. Let me show my screen again quickly to show you a couple of last slides. Of course, it's my warm invite to every one of you to go to lean2022.com to get more information about the summit and the speakers that we're going to have. And of course, also we're now about 4 weeks before the summit. So if you still want to secure your seat, your place to the summit, please go there and check it out. And we have the summit itself on the 11th of October, but I'm also very happy to announce, let's say, that we also the day after have a masterclass with Dave Snowden, how he's going to dive into more detail about complexity and his Cynefin framework and sense-making tool. On Thursday and Friday, we're going to have Nigel Thurlow, who's going to teach us all about the flow system. And I'm also happy to announce that we have a partnership with the Italian Agile movement, and together they were going to have the Italian Agile Days in Brescia on the 14th and the 15th. But all together, we call this the Lean and Agile Week, or the Italian Lean and Agile Week 2022. So I think for everybody who's looking for a week of learning, I think we have a lot to offer. And of course, not but the least, the summit and the masterclass and the flow system are going to be in Florence. And for everybody who doesn't really know, but I think it's more than I mean, a lot of people know. Of course, Florence is the home of the Renaissance. So what else? What other city in the world would be a good city to talk about improvement, about innovation? So you're very, very much invited to join us in Florence on the 11th of October. And again, John and Roberto, thank you very much for your time today, and looking forward to continue our talks on the 11th of October.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.